my iPad is actually out of storage, and my phone is actually running low on battery. So I'm just gonna try and wrap it up pretty quickly. But I think the change, if it does happen, is going to be along the same lines as us kind of going from a eukaryotic life form to who we are today. And it took us a couple of billion years to be able to get to this level, but because again of the fact that technology scales exponentially, the change from the kind of life form that exists on this planet today to the kind of life forms that could potentially exist, I think would be on the same scale. So we gotta do this right, obviously, and we have to do this in a transparent environment. But that's a much larger kind of conversation because of the geopolitical situation, obviously, and a couple other things. I'm not saying it's not an important conversation with the making of such a comment when I say it's a couple other things. I'm just saying that it is a pretty important conversation, and if we do this right, we will spread through the farther distance of the galaxy, and after that the universe at large, and that's going to have its own set of risks and rewards associated with it, in a kind of like a Drake's equation kind of a sense. But if we don't do it right, this is like a huge spectrum between doing it right and not doing it right. If you don't do it right, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like in a quantum kind of dynamic kind of a fashion. It's very difficult to predict one chain of events and its potential of taking us to a certain outcome. So in this case, not exactly in a kind of when it comes to a specific direction in time or anything like that. It's just, if we don't do it right, I don't know what's going to happen. So I think that's the kind of wider discussion as well. And again, words from Craig Venter kind of come to my mind where he says, we now have the technology but not the wisdom to be able to, I forget exactly how, it was something along those lines, but we have the technology to be able to make a really unbelievably amazing future for all conscious life form on this earth. And I mean like all, like from the bacteria to all the other life forms that share this planet with us, to us. And I think what's missing in the human construct is the ability to be able to talk and communicate and empathize and rationalize and understand what another person may be saying. So I say this often, that I think those kind of realities exist because of perceived and real differences that could be explained in terms cultural, anthropological of a nature. But I don't want to kind of summarize that the entire conversation just to that level, because what if I'm wrong? And what if reality is different? And what if we don't define the problems correctly? And so this is why I kind of say we got to move ahead with a more transparent manner, and only doing so will result in a reality by which all the individuals on Earth will have their own capacity to be able to define and redefine problems as they deem fit, with peer support and also peer review. It's like you have a problem, and if a set of people look at that problem with a limited skill set and limited knowledge set, then that problem will be defined crudely. And if you have the same problem being looked at by potentially an infinite variety and diversity, or a diverse group of individuals and people, then maybe we will define the problem differently, and maybe somebody would say, hey, I know you're thinking of doing this way, but what about this breakthrough and that breakthrough? And turns out the solution would be a quadrillion times more efficient and useful at that. So just to kind of wrap up, this conversation can go on for a long time. I started with a thought experiment, kind of define the terms of consciousness, and mention again that's a very wide catchphrase, and mention the possibility that we should start with something more simpler, such as a model for cognition. And then I, based on my very limited understanding and knowledge in the space, broke that model down into 3 areas, being of genes, or genome, genes, consciousness, and the unit of consciousness being beams, and from a psychological continuity point of view, the memes being a catchphrase for personality, everything, the stories you tell yourself, your identity is what makes you you. And we injected a thought experiment there in the middle, where we said, hey, if this is Mario and we want to give Mario an opportunity to be able to travel to a very far off place, a very beautiful version, or a very beautiful kind of exoplanet. It's kind of far in somewhere, Alpha Centauri or somewhere else. So you give Mario the choice to travel there in flesh and blood, or some replica of his digital, a digital replica of his cognitive self, with the experiences being kind of shared between the 2 versions of consciousness. Which option would Mario choose? I don't know. That's Mario's decision. And then we kind of looked at the whole thing from a variety of different angles, kind of looking at some existing state models, and why I personally believe that these models are going to be able to give us certain breakthroughs because they are working in a lab kind of environment and setting, as I've mentioned. So I think it's we got to have more of these conversations, and that's why I'm always trying to share whatever I've learned, because I also do it for my own sort of selfish reasons. I find that when I post more stuff online, then I don't know how the algorithms really work in the background, but I think there's some kind of understanding happening on at least a Google front, or on the Google side of things, because Google and the services offered by Google, based on what I share, always end up bringing more information my way that complements my knowledge, or my perception of certain realities. And that's